Good evening. This is Ruth and Ruth's Kitchen, and today we're going to talk about eggplant, broccoli, green peppers, and some onions. Also, I'm going to tell you how to cook a peacock. But first, we'll start off with some jokes. I had to give up tap dancing.
Why?
I kept falling in the sink. You don't get it. See, you know the taps on the sink? You turn on, got it. Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Ask me what the secret of a good joke is. Timing. What's a good... You people are so slow. Could try it again, but we'll go on. What's a good name for a robber's wife? Roberta. What's a good name for a pianist's wife? Octavia. What's a good name for a jeweler's wife? Ruby. What's a good name for a lawyer's wife? Sue. All right, now on to the more serious side of this affair, which is cooking, more or less. A few months ago, someone sent me an article called How to Cook a Peacock. Now, many of you may not have any peacocks roaming around in your backyard, but perhaps you have a friend whom you don't like and you'd like to take their peacock and kill it. Well, I have a wonderful recipe for you if you're into murdering peacocks, and by the way, they roam freely up in the hills of La Cañada. But I should tell you that Barbara K. Wheaton, who wrote this article, did not just take any peacock and kill it. This was a very carefully designed study, and she did it very seriously, and she's a medievalist in Massachusetts, and it was not for the purpose of destroying that beautiful bird. But, you know, some of you may just have an anxiety attack and have to get into peacocks, which is fine with me. Now that the revival of interest in medieval cooking is full upon us, someday you may be called upon, as I was last spring, to prepare a roast peacock. Like me, you will find that although there are many old recipes, these are lacking in essential details. Therefore, I offer some observations from my own experiences in preparing a peacock in the 14th century manner. Step 1. Freeze the peacock, at least briefly, to kill any lurking insects and other parasites. Vacuum it gently to remove them. In other words, you take your basic hoover after you've put the peacock in the freezer and you pull it out and you run the hoover along it to make sure there are no bugs. It's very, very clear. Thaw the bird out before beginning to skin it. Do not let it be frozen solid. Place the peacock right side up on a sturdy roasting rack. If the presence of the head, that's the peacock's head, unnerves you, wrap it in paper towels and then enclose it in a plastic bag. Tie up gently with string. For all of you who might like to be baby killers, you can get into peacocks instead. With the embroidery scissors, snip an opening in the skin at the base of the neck between the wings. You may feel, as I did, a need to apologize to the bird first. The bird understands. Vacuum away the bits of fluff and debris that accumulate both now and as you proceed. Cut towards the tail in a straight line as you can, drawing the skin back from both sides as you go along. When you come to the wings, change direction. Begin to cut on a downward slant, still tailwards but passing below one wing. By the way, if you think you hear bells in the background right now, it's only those tolling for the peacock. Then you peel the wing skin back as far as you can or until you are near the end of the second joint. Saw or cut through the bone, taking care not to injure the meat, the skin, or your own fingers. The fingers are the most important. This may be impossible, but you have a choice. You can injure the saw, the skin, or your fingers. By the way, these are my original fingers in case you're interested, and I use a knife very well. Also chopsticks. We'll get to that later. Continue working towards the tail, dealing with the leg as you did with the wing. This bone should be sawed below the meaty area, but the bony struts will have to be cut with the poultry shears before you can begin to saw. Imagine having a car as well built as a peacock. Cut and pull the skin back as you approach the tail. It is so firmly anchored to the last vertebrae that you will have to cut through the bone again using those faithful shears. Then free the other side of the bird from the skin as you did the first. By now you should have a great admiration for the many kinds of feathers and as great a distaste for the pervasive, unpleasant smell. At this point you may find that your peacock has not been eviscerated. Do it. We will have no comment on this. Then rinse the body cavity thoroughly in cold running water. Pack the skin with containers of ice and set it aside. It will look very disorganized, and so will you and your kitchen. Step 2. Truss the peacock as you would a chicken. It will be the size of a capon, but with no fat on its body at all. Arrange it on your rotisserie spit so that the weight is evenly distributed. Start it revolving over the heating element and cook it for about 3 hours until done. When it is half cooked, button it, which is a 14th century term, with cloves as you would a ham. Begin basting it with rose water and continue to baste it from time to time until it is done. Doneness in a peacock has, unfortunately, not been defined by any of the ancient or modern authorities, but it gives off a wooden sound when wrapped with the knuckles at a temperature of only 150 degrees. If you don't know how a wooden sound sounds, try rapping on a casket first. It's sort of like a knock-knock. It's exactly the opposite of a sound that when bread is done, it has a hollow sound. A wooden sound does not echo. It just sounds like a dead person inside. So try that with your peacock. Step 3. By this time, you will have seen enough of the bird, so get someone else to carve it into dozens of little pieces. I would recommend husbands for the jobs because they deal with birds very well. It would be appropriate to have a peacock tasting. Volunteers will come forward more or less spontaneously. You will find that some people love it, others think it unpalatable, a number do not want to taste it at all, and a few tactful friends will find it interesting. You know that word, interesting. When you've had many mistakes in the kitchen, you serve it to someone and someone says, that's very interesting. Step 4. In the morning, make an armature with a single length of heavy-duty taxidermist wire and cover it with masking tape. The base should be an oval just long enough to hold the carcass. From one end of the oval, the wire should extend all the way up inside the intact neck to the skin. This, by the way, is not the pleasantest part of the work. Step 5. Strip down the carcass for use as a container. Remove the breastbone and what remains of the leg and wing bones. Heat all the meat up in the carcass, then cut 2 lengths of plastic food wrap, each about 2.5 feet long, and arrange them crosswise over the armature. Their purpose is to isolate the cooked meat from the raw skin, a concession to modern sensibilities. Set the carcass filled with meat inside the plastic wrap and the armature. Carefully fold the plastic wrap so as to enclose the meat. Step 6. Thread a leather needle, which is less likely to tear the skin than an ordinary one, with lightweight wire. The latter is more authentic than cotton, and you want to use, by the way, no thread that has a dye in it that might run. And then you start sewing at the base of the neck. Take stitches directly down towards the meat, but not into it or the plastic from alternate sides. Step 7 is you refrigerate until serving. By the way, adjusting the neck of the bird is a difficult process. Brush the beak with little egg white as glue and lay the gold leaf on it. The intrepid may wish to give the bird glass eyes. My courage failed at the last minute, and they're still rolling around here on my desk. I just covered the lids with small dots of gold leaf instead. Step 7. Refrigerate until serving cold later the same day. The bird should be presented on a large platter sitting up, head erect, feet set sphinx-like before it, tail stretched out behind it. It may be surrounded by a garland of flowers, but this is hardly necessary, for it is its own decoration. It is carried in and presented to the guests of honor, preferably with a small fanfare from any available musical instruments. You will find that it makes a very imposing sight from its gilded beak to its great train of iridescent tail feathers. Locate the seam, remove the meat to a clean platter, and serve. By the way, I hope you have better luck in finding the seam than I did. Frequently asked questions are, why do it? Well, as a culinary historian, it's a very interesting exercise. How could you bring yourself to do it? The peacock has been raised as a domestic animal. Judging from the excellent condition of the bird I cooked, I would guess that it lived under much better conditions than most of the poultry that is raised for the table. I would not consider cooking a wild bird, a heron, for example, although that too was a popular medieval dish, because a mature bird of such a species is a survivor.